Hey everyone, Mr. Fugay here. This video is going to walk through some of the important skills and or strategies to help you in your coordinate geometry project. So we're going to kind of do a mini project here together in this video so you get a chance to see how I was able to do some of the things in the sample Desmos that you will probably take a look at as you're reading the directions for this project. So first thing we need to do is we need to identify a city that we want to construct these tunnels, as I'm going to call them. If you want to call it train track, subway, whatever. I'm going to refer to them as tunnels. So we got to create a city for that. And so I've chosen for this demonstration to do Nashville, Tennessee, one of my favorite cities. So what we're going to do first is identify that city on Google Maps, and I'm going to zoom in as I've already have. So, you can pick whatever city you want. Doesn't even have to be in the United States if you don't want, but we're going to zoom in and we're going to look at Nashville. And basically on the screen, scale it to where you want to have it. Like I want to include the Grand Ole Opry in my work, so I have that up here. I have some places in West Nashville. It doesn't really matter. But before we take this screenshot, one of the most important things we need to do is we need to identify how long a mile is on here. Now, down in the very bottom right-hand corner, you'll see it actually does have something there listed, but we're going to create something more definitive, and it's easier for us to scale when we go to Desmos. So I'm just going to pick anywhere on the map, probably somewhere towards the bottom half, and I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to hit measure distance. So right there you see this white point has been formed. Let's pick somewhere that we think is a mile away. We're going to guess over here where mouse is. I'm going to right click and we're going to hit distance to here. And you'll see that it measured it out, okay? I overshot it. It's 1.7 miles. What I'm going to then do is I'm going to click on it. So I'm just regular clicking and dragging it back so that it ends up being a mile. You can make it 2 miles if you want, or 3 miles, but pick some kind of even measurement. So there it is. There's 1 mile. You also want to maintain that this is as horizontal as possible, which will make sense once we're over onto Desmos. So once you've chosen your city, once you've chosen and created your scale, it is now time to take a screenshot. To do that, I like to use the snipping tool. So you can click on the search icon, and if you just start typing in snipping tool, there it is, comes up. And you'll see a window pop up on the screen here that looks like this. Just make sure that you have it set to snip. You will click on new, and there are sorts of different ways to take a screenshot. I like to do rectangle mode so that you can customize how large you want it to be. So if I click on new, you'll see that the screen either grays out or blackouts here. I'm going to go to the top left-hand corner, click and hold, and it's going to highlight everything. And there it is. So now I've created a picture of the city of Nashville that we are going to put in Desmos. The easiest way to save this is click on the save icon here. So when you click on that, you can just save it to desktop. I'm going to call it Nashville Demo for this portion of the video. And that concludes the Google Maps portion of this lesson. So now we're going to jump over to Desmos, and we're going to start to create our triangles and start to create our tunnel system. So we go to regular Desmos.com, not the teacher, or not the student Desmos page, but just regular Desmos.com. Click on Graphing Calculator. And before we start this, we need really to make sure that we're going to be saving this to our account. So make sure you're logged in your Desmos account. You should see your name up there. Unlike cloud-based things like a Word or Google Docs, you will have to manually save this along the way. The save button is grayed out because I haven't started anything yet. So the first thing I'm going to do is insert the picture. We're going to put the plus button. We're going to go ahead down to image. And now we're going to go ahead and choose the photo that we found on Google Maps. So there it is. It is now on screen. We're going to scale it in a minute. But before we do that, let's go ahead and hit that save button. And we're going to call it, I'll call this Nashville Demo for the purposes of this video. We'll hit save. As this is grayed out, it means everything is currently saved. But the second I were to change something, so let's make this bigger, for example, notice it turns blue. Don't forget to hit that save every once in a while so you don't end up losing your work and your progress. So what I find to be probably the most tedious task of this project is now I need to have this 1 mile marker that I created back on Desmos essentially be 1 unit on Desmos. So one thing I'm going to do is go here and make this a little bolder so it's easier to see. So the way that you can move this around is the center dot helps you move this up, down, left, right, and then these little corner pools are going to allow you to change the size. So really, we're just going to play around with this until we get that to be exactly 1. So here we go. So 1 unit for me is 1 block here. So I need to keep stretching this So let's see, did I go? I actually went too big because as you can see right now, that line is longer than 1 unit. So let's go ahead and let's make that a little smaller. And it's going to be, again, a little finickier at times to work with, but just play around with it. And then once you have it, you'll be set for the rest of the project. So it looks like there. Oh, maybe a little bit more. There. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at what we have. So it looks like 1 unit is going from the origin to right here, and I'm pretty close here, which means now every unit on Desmos is equivalent to 1 mile in actual Nashville, Tennessee. So we have our picture, and now we're going to be ready to start to do some various constructions here. We're going to go through a few of them. We're going to construct a triangle on this video, an isosceles triangle. I will then construct a perpendicular bisector, and then I will also construct an altitude and show you the steps for that. You're going to create a lot of different lines here on Desmos. So one thing that I like to recommend is to create folders so that you can keep things organized. So for example, I'm going to create a folder and I'm going to drag it down here, and we're just going to call this segment or tunnels. These are going to be all the tunnels that we're going to create. I'm going to create another folder that I'm going to call my stations or my points. So I'll say stations, which are again going to be points on our graph. Tunnels are going to actually be our segments. So let's go ahead and let's create our first 2 stations. And I'm just going to pick 2 spots in Nashville that I feel like might be important landmarks for us to mark. So the first one I'm going to mark is downtown. So this is areas called Broadway. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a point to go here. And so we're going to, on our line here, I'm going to call it B for Broadway. So point B, you have to use a lowercase letter in order to do some of the things that I'm going to show here. So we're going to guess this point to be 1 comma or 1 comma 1. And the other thing I'm going to do is click this label check, and I'm going to actually write Broadway. So that'll be easy for me to identify. Now, if you notice, I did not actually get where Broadway is. Those are familiar with Nashville, Broadway is down in this southern area of the city. So I'm going to click, drag that point, and I'm going to move it down to Broadway. And, you can make it, like, for example, I don't want 1.31. Maybe I'll just call it 1.3, comma 0. So that first point is Broadway. The other thing you might notice is the city of Nashville itself looks really kind of busy here with all these different marks and things like that. Up in the picture here, don't change center, width, height, or angle, but here's opacity. 1 means 100%. If I want to make this a little lighter so it's easier to see, I like to recommend 0.3. You see how you can still see the city of Nashville, but it ends up being a little bit easier for us to try to kind of locate where things are. So the next point I'm going to make is something for the airport. So we're going to call it point A. So A for airport. Once again, I'm just going to kind of guess. We're going to say 7 comma negative 1. Let's go with that and see if that works. 7 comma negative 1. We'll go ahead and click label, and we'll go ahead and call this airport. And so there we go. So we've created 2 segments. There's Broadway. There's the airport. This is the first segment and first tunnel that I want to create to link those 2 cities together. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and create a line, and that's going to be our tunnel. If you want to organize these 2 points, you can click and drag, and you see how it creates that line right there? It's going to move it inside as a folder item. And I just do that again for organizational purposes because look now, I can close the stations folder, and there's my points. There they are. We're going to create the line for this, and what I would like to do is usually use point slope form. So I'm going to use the point B as my point. So it'll be y minus 0 equals, I'm going to leave a fraction, hit the division button. We'll come back and do slope in a minute. And then it would be x minus 1.3. So this is my point slope form. I use the point for Broadway as my point. And my slope, you can actually do the calculations within Desmos here. So for example, my y2 minus y1 will be negative 1 minus 0. And then my denominator will be 7 minus 1.3. Now, if you don't like having that as your slope, you can, of course, use your calculator to simplify this if you want. And if you want to like convert it to a fraction or whatever, that's fine. So for example, I can leave my answer like that, or I can make it the fraction, and I just type this in my calculator, negative 10 over 57. And you'll see that it creates the exact same line, that purple line that goes between Broadway and the airport. Now, at this point, you'll notice that the line goes beyond Broadway and it goes beyond the airport. But I only want my tunnel system to go between Broadway and the airport. So one of the other things you can do on Desmos after you create the equation of the line is we can restrict the domain so that the line only is plotted between Broadway and the airport. To do that, we're going to click on the curly brackets. We're going to pick the smallest x value that I want to start at. So at Broadway, that's 1.3, less than x. And what you can see now has already happened is everything to the left of Broadway is gone. And I just want to now truncate and cut off everything to the right of the airport. So we're going to finish this compound inequality by hitting less than. And in this case, the airport is located at x equals 7. We now have one streamlined tunnel that goes between Broadway and the airport. So that's going to be our first major construction. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create an isosceles triangle with this, and then we will also construct a perpendicular bisector as well as an altitude. But my last thought for this first video is if you don't like all the different colors, or let's say you want to color code things, you can move over here on top of these. If you click and hold on the blue, you'll see that it comes up here with different colors. So we can, let's say I want to make everything black. So we can click black for that, go down here to point A, click and hold, make that black, and then lastly, click and hold and make everything the same color. That's up to you. It's up to your preference. And the very last thing I'm going to do, since this is my first tunnel system, I need to finish that curly bracket. We're going to go ahead and click and drag this up to my tunnel folder. You'll see that line is now formed. So when I collapse it, my tunnels and my stations are all nice and organized. So there is the first segment we've created. Video 2 will go over the remaining constructions for a triangle, altitude, and perpendicular bisector.